Welcome to the site. I am Kavan Klein. We trade with Kavan.com. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, depending on what time you're watching this. Wanted to quickly go over today what we were watching this morning, the trades that we made, kind of show you what we're all about. So hopefully you saw some of the news and how that works in the intro. I want to show you now what we were watching today. So one of the names that we were watching today, Apple short, that would be my biggest gainer on the day, which I'll run through in a second. We were watching Twitter. This never hit the entry. We were watching First Solar, if it could hold above 49.64, and we detail this every morning about half an hour before the bell. We'll kind of run through what we're watching. We were watching NVIDIA long, Trip short, Trip long above 78.01. We actually made money on it short, and I'll show you the setup here in a second. We were watching EXPE short above 87.11. Obviously, after the fact, it's easy to say, well, that was stupid. You should have watched it long. But we were watching it short. That was my loser on the day. I actually lost a little bit with slippage. I did short it twice for a profit, which I'll go over in a second. But I did have one loser on that. Cisco, we were watching long. Tesla, we were going to watch long around 185.50. If you put a line on your chart around 185, you'll see there was a lot of support for Tesla at that level. Ended up rallying, but it didn't get near where we wanted to buy it. The SPY, we were just watching for a grind higher. This actually did take out the level, or we were watching 205.82 just in case. We had to set as a warning in case the market was going to sell off. And then FireEye long, we were watching above 38.93, which would have worked, but we didn't take it. So my biggest trade on the day was Apple short, and I'll run through that here in a second. So Apple had a parabolic push on the day chart. Now, some charts, some stocks, a $6 move is not parabolic, especially a $100 stock. But for Apple, considering the size of the float and the market cap, this is actually a parabolic move for Apple. And I was watching this short yesterday around 125, but it never actually hit the entry we wanted. So I was watching it short around 125 today. We were watching it short around 127.50 intraday. So we pull up our chart on our 5-minute chart, and I'll show you why I thought this was going to fade. But not only because it had a big move, and even if it doesn't fade, if we can just find a spot to get in where we get a favorable move for 10 or 15 minutes, and we can cover half and then adjust our stop, and then it doesn't work out like Trip, which I'll show you next, we can still make money and it's still worth a stab. But this actually did work out very, very well. You can look at this chart, and you'll see today's first 5-minute bar had this massive bar, one of the biggest 5-minute bars it's had in a while. So because of that, I knew that this could have been the capitulation top, and it could have completely rolled over. So if you look at your intraday chart, when it got around 127.50, so around 127.50, it kind of started to stall, and I saw the level 2 stacking up. So I took a stab short at this. My average ended up being 127.36 with a stop at 127.51. Now what I did here is I covered half when we got to move down. So we got to move down. I covered half down here. 127.05 as we started to get that push through, and it actually broke through 127, and it got to 126.70, and as soon as it got kind of back up and it started getting near 127, I went ahead and covered. But it ended up putting in a bearish engulfing bar on the 5-minute right here, and as soon as this 5-minute bar took out this high and then took out this low, because we know the day chart is very overbought, and you don't have to get your stochastics out to see that. You can just see that the day chart's very overbought. As soon as we took out this low right here, 126.89, 126.90, so 126.89, 126.88 ended up being my entry, but 126.89 was where we were trying to get in. With a stop at the high of the bar, 127.15. We ended up adding, as it got close to our stop, 127.11. We put a little bit more on, because if you're adding close to the stop, there's very minimal risk. And then it ends up coming in, and we actually ended up covering way, way down here. So our exit on Apple today, Apple short, 127.05, 126.98 on the first short. That's from a 127.36 entry. And then from a 126.92 entry, we were covering 126.55 and 125.81. So huge over a point on one of those shorts. And again, with very minimal risk. And you can short a lot of shares of Apple because there's a lot of liquidity. You keep a very tight stop and you won't get a lot of slippage. So this was my best short on the day, my best trade on the day, period. I also traded BP long, so I went over that. If you saw the intro, there was a little brief thing about JS Trader's news alert. And what I try to do when I trade these news alerts is I want to see when he puts it in the room, how much has the stock moved. So when I saw this, he put this in the room, I knew that because of this volume bar, this must have been when the news came out. So I could get long right here on this candle, the very next candle at 1:20 p.m. Eastern Time, and put a stop a penny below the low and see if the news story catches on. And if it doesn't catch on, guess what? I'm risking less than 10 cents. So it doesn't matter. If it doesn't catch on, oh well, I'll lose 10 cents. But it ended up catching on and spikes up to 41.80, and we were selling all right in here and then pulls back. Now you might say, well, that sucks. It spiked up and it pulled back. Put a timer in front of yourself and watch 2 minutes go by. And keep in mind, you've been in it for a minute, it spikes up for a minute, and then it pulls back. And you actually had plenty of time. You actually had 3 minutes to get out as high as 41.73. So there was plenty of time to get out of this. And I call everything and tell you everything that I'm doing in real time. So there is plenty of time to get out of this. I know that it might say, well, man, I really don't want to trade that fast. Well, guess what? 2 minutes is plenty of time to get out of a stock, especially with that kind of gain and that kind of risk, right? So if you get 30 cents, that's 3 to 1 on your risk reward. And you could have got more than that, but I was just quick to get out. Had a good day going, so I was quick to get out of that. Another trade that I took, we were watching trip long, which would have been the best way to trade it. But I did trade. In the morning, there was a 1 minute flag breakdown. Now, this was the example that I was telling you I was going to show you. So we had a 1 minute flag. This ends up breaking down. So I'm shorting this right here on this break. We're actually shorting. We were shorting because this could have rolled completely over. This was a comp play off Expedia. So this could have rolled completely over because the news, although in the same sector, was not directly related to Trip. So 79.47 short. Now we end up covering on the crack of 79. I ended up covering some 78.87 average out on the first half, and then it pops up, and then my average out on the second half was 79.27. But my entry was 79.47, and as soon as I cover half, I got a break-even stop in. And so this runs back up and it doesn't work. But you never know. This could have rolled completely over just like Apple did because the news wasn't directly related to Trip. And when you see it not holding a big number like this, so this is not holding $80, so a big number, 80, 90, 70 psychological levels, and it's not holding, you never know. This thing could go back and test 75 and then a few days later come back and test 80. So you just never know. So because it wasn't holding that big level, I went ahead and shorted this. Again, the day chart was set up for a long. That's how we were initially watching it, but 80's not holding, and so we ended up shorting that. Only other name I traded today was Expedia. This was my loser. This was my big loser. Okay, it was Expedia short. So I tried shorting this initially off of this big red bar. I thought this was going to come in. I had to stop at the high, and I had some slippage. Now, I still thought this was going to come in because the day chart wasn't set up, and the day chart is always what makes your trade. And I was trading around this gap level right here, and you can actually see it better on my day chart. So EXP, so I was trading around this dotted purple line right here, this gap level. I thought this was going to come in, had a lot of resistance at 88, so I thought this was going to come in, and obviously it didn't, and it would have been a great long, but I was watching it short. I would have loved to watch it long, but this is kind of a big move. The stock standard ATR before today was $2.55 or $3, and so you're going to say, okay, well, this is going to open around 87. Do I think it's going to get to 92? And the answer is no. So I wouldn't even have wanted to take this on the break of 92.08 because it was probably going to top out because it would have been extended. So I was watching it short again. You're not going to be right every single time. Now, I took this short once, and I had some slippage on it, and so that cost me a little bit. But I still thought this was going to come in, so I shorted it again up here on the break of this 1 minute bar low, 88.08. I was actually, my entry on that short was 87.48, covered 86.75 and 87.37, and then shorted it again. This on a 5 minute chart, this was actually a bear flag. So if you pull up a 5 minute chart, I was shorting a bear flag right here. So this 5 minute chart right here, you have this bar, your first opening bar, this would be your pull, this would be your flag, and so I was shorting up on the flag with a stop, 87.72. and covered for a gain here. So I had 2 small gains on it. Not really what I wanted, but again, we call everything real time. You can trade it. You can trade it with us. Wasn't what I wanted on this. This ended up reversing, but hey, this could have rolled over and hit 85. You never know what's going to happen. All right, but that's what I traded today. It was a big day today. Hopefully, we will see you tomorrow in the chat room, and we can put in a big day tomorrow to finish out the week. Everybody have a good night.